Our next guest is, well, I know his name is David Joseph, but he's got a pretty important job, it seems.
Yep, the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Louisiana. Is that official?
That's right.
That's the official title.
Good morning, Erin. Good morning, Robert. How are you all today?
How do you get that job? It sounds pretty impressive.
Well, it's a presidential appointment, and it has to be confirmed by the Senate.
Right.
So I've been on the job.
So it is.
Well, it has a lot of responsibility associated with it. Yes, it does.
You are working on crime fighting efforts. Typically, most of us think the feds work on these white collar crimes, these bank fraud type things, maybe a bank robbery here or there. But you're doing way more than that to try to help curb crime in Shreveport. Tell us a little bit about the program you're involved in.
Right, Erin. Well, my background is a white-collar public corruption prosecutor. That's kind of what I did as a federal prosecutor before I got this job. But we try to fill in where there's a need, and we feel across the country that violent crime rates are going up, and that the federal government has an important role to play in reducing that violent crime. So, Project Safe Neighborhoods is a program that was implemented originally in the early 2000s when crime rates were really high across the country. It kind of went on hold for the last 10 years, but we've reinvigorated that program, refunded it, and we are focusing more of our prosecutorial resources on violent crime, particularly felons with guns and drug dealers with guns who cause the most damage to the communities that they're in.
It looks like you've nabbed about 200 violent criminals, and about half of them right here in our market.
We kind of started the Project Safe Neighborhoods program here in Shreveport about a year ago. We've since expanded it to the other four major cities in the district. Shreveport, I think it's benefited from the program, and I think some of the crime rate reductions we've seen recently have to do with that program.
As a matter of fact, reading from the release, since the program was implemented last year in Shreveport, violent crime has seen a significant drop. Now, pardon me, the numbers may in fact say that, but the sense among the citizens of Shreveport, economic backgrounds, race aside, is probably just the opposite. Why is that?
I don't know exactly why the perception is as it is. I think that part of it is kind of the interconnectedness we are as a society now lends itself towards people having more information than they may have had in the past about what's going on, and it kind of acts as an echo chamber. People hear the same story over and over again, and they think there's an epidemic going on. Crime is too high. One murder is too many. And, we're going to do everything we can to stop it. But a false narrative of crime rates that are out of control doesn't help.
There's been sort of a controversy lately among, right here in Shreveport, you may be aware, between the SPD with the only perceived uptick in crime, and whether or not the Shreveport police should get assistance from Caddo Sheriff or the U.S. Marshal or the state police. What are you guys doing? Are you doing something specifically to help to work with the SPD, given the fact there's been this controversy where the SPD has said, no, we might not need help from anybody else? How does that work?
We have had very good working relationships with Shreveport Police Department and the Sheriff's Office and state police. Federal agents are not patrol officers. They don't patrol streets. So we rely on all the local agencies to kind of gather the ground information for us to build cases. We don't delve into kind of political type arguments or local or state politics or resource allocations. That's kind of outside of our lane. But we have had a very good relationship with all those players involved.
Let me ask you this, and we're talking to David Joseph, who's the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Louisiana. Folks in your office and SPD, others will say, you can really hone in on a small group of criminals that are responsible for high numbers of crimes in our community.
Absolutely.
And how do you, from the federal standpoint, how do you guys help in honing in on these guys? Are you tracking them? Are you watching them the moment they get out of jail? What's happening?
Okay, so every month, and we started this about a year ago in Shreveport, we've been having what we call the worst of the worst meetings, and it's organized by my office. It's usually at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we invite the Shreveport Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, State Police, and of course FBI, DEA, and ATF all attend the meeting, and we pool our resources. What the Shreveport Police Department and what the Sheriff's Department can tell us that we don't know already is what's going on there in the neighborhoods. Who are they seeing pop up again and again and again? And it's not that hard to figure out. You look at the rap sheets of these people. You look at who's what the neighbors are saying about who's causing problems, who's terrorizing their neighborhoods, and it's pretty easy to get a list together of who we need to prosecute. And so then we just look and see if there's a federal offense.
What makes it rise to that? I was curious about that.
Okay, well, a felon in possession, as long as the gun was manufactured out of state or some component was manufactured out of state, which all of them pretty much are, it's a federal offense. So a felon in possession, that's the majority of the cases we're talking about, which, of course, as you know, only requires that we find the felon with a gun, which most of these drug dealers always have guns on them. So it's not typically that difficult to bring a charge against them. The other major kind of offense that we find effective in trying to take these people off the streets is what we call 924C, which is the section number. It's drug dealers that have guns, that use guns as part of their business. And
getting them in federal court,
right?
Is that a quicker process from the time of the arrest to the time of locking them up?
Yes, we have the Speedy Trial Act, so within 70 days of when we indict somebody, a trial date is set. Now, that may be continued, but it moves pretty quick once we get going. So once we get the reports together, once we get all the information from the local police department and the sheriff's office, we can usually move pretty fast on them.
Yet here in Louisiana, we had the last couple of years the Justice Reinvestment Act, which was earlier releases, lighter sentences. The zeitgeist, at least on the political left across the country, seems to be, hell, you've heard the abolish prisons, abolish ICE, etc. There seems to be a trend among politicians in some states across the country for incredibly lighter sentencing and early releases. You got to be pulling your hair out when you see that, right?
Well, Robert, I did talk about how, Shreveport's crime is not out of control, which is great, but over the last 4 years, there has been a dramatic increase from where it needs to be. So, there is a crime problem, and I do believe that you really can reduce crime by taking what I call the worst of the worst off the streets and out of the neighborhoods. You take them and put them in federal prison, and they don't cause havoc in their community.
And so back
anymore.
to my question, do you find that there is nationwide, or at least across the South, or at least in your area, that there is at some point a growing political resistance to longer sentences and what they call harsh, unfair imprisonment?
Well, the criminal justice system always is a pendulum. It goes back and forth between punishment and keeping people off the streets on one side, and then trying to reform them on the other side. It's a pendulum. It goes back and forth. We saw in the 70s the same thing happened. That some people, some political types thought that we needed to lighten up prison sentences and focus more on rehabilitation of the inmates.
So you kind of see leniency as a trend, or am I overspeaking?
It goes back and forth, and it has to do with what you talked about before, Robert, about what people perceive as the problem in the community. And if they perceive that the government's being too harsh on criminals, then it'll swing one way. If they perceive that crime rates are too high, it'll swing the other way.
David Joseph, U.S. Attorney for the Western District. You said a minute ago, violent crime rates are, you used the word dramatically up over the past 4 years.
They have been, in Shreveport, they have gone up over the past 4 years.
Why? Can you answer that?
I wish I could.
If it's the same guys, the question you asked earlier, if it's the same core of bad guys to which you both referred, then there must be a lot of bad guys.
Well, there's not that many, but they cause an outsized effect, and they influence the younger people, Robert. So you have one guy in the neighborhood that may be a drug dealer, and maybe he has a nicer car than everybody else, and the kids start looking up to him, and so that guy influences the smaller, younger people in the neighborhood to do that kind of.
So basically,
can you attribute it though to the lack of jobs, to the economy, to gang activity, to
That was going to be my
homelessness.
question. Basically, it's you against the gangs.
Right. It's me along with my state and local partners against the gangs. Yes, we. I don't know why the crime rates have gone up.
And are gangs a growing problem? Not only American gangs, but MS-13 and immigrant gangs.
Well, thank goodness we have not seen MS-13 in the Western District. We do have our own gangs. We have local gangs, and we know that we have some gang activity having to do with, transnational drug trafficking organizations.
Is Louisiana, I don't mean to get way off track here, is Louisiana, specifically this part of Louisiana, the drug hub for the South that a lot of people around here think we are?
No. It's mainly a corridor. Most of the the quantity of drugs that we take out of this district are moving from Houston to Atlanta.
So many people in our area have the sense that Shreveport is like the hub of this wheel, that we supply Dallas, we supply Houston, we supply Atlanta, we supply Memphis. That's not the case.
No, that's not the case.
What can
it does go through here a lot just because we have I-20.
Uh-huh.
Right.
What can the law-abiding folks that are listening to you this morning, what can they do? Is there anything they can do to help fight crime?
Just be vigilant. Be vigilant and, kind of identify the needs in their community. As you pointed out, Erin, a lot of one of the reasons crime may go up is because of opportunities of perceived, economic distress, wealth disparity, just the same issues that a lot of cities have, and just trying to engage the youth and put them on a better path may be effective.
Would we be better off if we had more things for young people to do? If you had a magic wand and you could wave it over Shreveport, would that be something that would be on your list?
I think that does help, and I think some communities have seen success with that. I don't know, what immediate effect it would have, but obviously, if there's better choices, easy choices for kids to make that will take them out of a life of crime, then that's, we're fully supportive of that.
These criminals we're talking about, you're talking about young people for the most part. You're talking about folks under 30. Is that who you're battling?
Yes.
Almost 100%.
Most of them. We do have some repeat offenders who may have actually been prosecuted by my office previously. They served a long federal sentence and they get out, and some of them will reoffend. But normally after they get to be about 40, you don't see them again.